Welcome to Tattoo Tabletop. My name is James, and today we're just going to take it nice and easy. I am still currently recovering from a bit of sciatic pain, which has not been fun. Honestly, sitting, standing, the whole 9 yards has been very uncomfortable, but we are getting better, so that's a plus. I really haven't gotten a lot of painting done, which has been very, very unfortunate, but c'est la vie. And then on top of that, currently right now, the event I went to last night may have come with some food poisoning, so we're firing on all cylinders. So I figured we'd just keep it nice and easy, and we're going to react to Age of Sigmar 4. Where are we at with the first 6 weeks, as you can see on screen, obviously. So these stats come from the Honest Wargamer. This is probably what I would consider the most reputable source of information in terms of the game and the game's health. They do a much better job. I wouldn't say they all do a really good job at handling the stats, figuring out what's working, what's not, and seeing where the armies are standing in terms of what we're looking at in the competitive scene. But enough talking, let's just get straight into it. So, Age of Sigmar, first 6 weeks. Here is the spread. So, as we can see, Night Haunt has an overwhelming 64% win rate. Now, that tracks. Again, I'm full disclosure right now, I am not an Age of Sigmar nor a 40k expert. I am not the most winningest boy, but I play the game, play a decent amount. I'm not going to pretend that I play the most or anything like that, but these are just going to be my gut reactions to these, and maybe it'll give you some perspective, maybe it'll give you some insight, maybe it'll give you something to think about. Who knows? This is just me offering up my opinion on the matter. So here we go, 64% Night Haunt. Does that make sense to me? Absolutely. Night Haunt being completely unrendable is already a pretty decent protection, because one of the things that prevails most death armies is not having a great save, unless you're Bone Reapers, in which case you get an okay save that is improved by Catacrosis, Supreme Lord of the Bone Reaper Legions. That gives another +1 save. It's one of the few +1s to save outside of the all-out defense, which you can also do in all-out defense, and then you get +2. Etc. So again, besides the Bone Reapers, everybody in the Death faction usually has a lower save, but they have a ward. They have a 6-up Deathless ward. Pair Night Haunt with Unrendable, 6-up Deathless ward, and then some of their abilities, being able to run and charge, if I recall, from combat, just hopping out and doing that. Night Haunt have a lot of tools in the tool chest, and they have a lot of really strong abilities. Seeing them at 64% makes complete and utter sense to me. The next runners-up are the Lumineth Realm Lords, sitting at 57%. This is, again, another one that makes sense to me. Shooting in Age of Sigmar has always been a pretty strong mechanic. Again, in a game that's based around a lot of melee, being able to shoot your opponents has been a very strong point. Now, the one thing that stands out particularly to me with Lumineth Realm Lords is not just necessarily that they have shooting, it's that they have shooting very well, and number 2, they have very strong abilities. A particular game that you might recall from one of my previous videos, last match I played in the previous RTT, not the GT, with my Flesh Eater Courts, is that the Kangaroos shot through -1 rend into my stuff that already had a 5-up or a 6-up save, and it removed wards. That is going to give them a strong advantage against anything that has a lower armor save, and because anything that tends to have a lower armor save is more than likely going to have a ward sitting around there somewhere. So it just kind of makes sense. Pair those two together, plus their movement, plus their magic, plus their casting, and plus being able to auto-pop a Kronspine Incarnate, that absolutely bodes for success in the tournament. So Lumineth Realm Lords, that also makes sense. Ogre Maw Tribes, 55%. That actually, I'm kind of surprised it's not a little higher, if I'm being honest. It could just be a representation bit. I don't know. I know a couple Ogre Maw Tribes players. I don't know a ton of Ogre Maw Tribes players, but as someone who played against them in the GT, that is a lot of beef to cut through. That I would think that will get adjusted when they do get points changes. I think a lot of people suspect that the Gluttons are going to go up in points. And if that's the case, then I think that'll fall back into that happy little medium in the center there. I think that's I think that's where we're going to see them once they get their points adjusted. No mechanics that are really terribly broken or anything like that. It's mainly just the cost for the amount of meat you get. So I could see that working out. Disciples of Zeech, I could see that as well. I am not as familiar with Disciples of Zeech, if I'm being honest. Even though one of my teammates plays them. Shout out to Joe. There you go, buddy. But their casting ability, they pull a lot of shenanigans. These things I do know, and that does give them a very strong presence. They are just over that. They are just on that 55% mark. I don't foresee them getting touched much in terms of the battle scroll update. When we do get a battle scroll update to, adjust points or adjust rules or anything like that, I think Zeech is probably still sitting in a decent enough spot. And who knows, they could maybe come out on top at the end of this if Lumina, Night Haunt, and the Ogremon tribes get adjusted accordingly. But we'll find out. Now, let's dive into these middle sections here. So, Soulblight Grave Lords, 53%, Gloom Spite at 54%. That's actually kind of an interesting one. I hadn't heard much about that, but they seem to be doing more, and we've had some more results that the Honest Wargamer has covered. They are continuing to post some good results. Bone Splitters is awesome. I love seeing armies that are on their way out actually doing well, including Beasts of Chaos at 48%. That could be purely representation basis. Cities of Sigmar is doing pretty decently. I've looked at some of the war scrolls there. There's a lot of tools in the tool chest there. And also, I think the one thing that Cities of Sigmar has done really nicely going from 3rd into 4th edition is people were really upset that in 3rd edition they really wanted you to build just a pure human army. It feels like with the faction pack for 4th edition that there's a lot of cohesion between the entirety of the army, whether you're running dwarves, humans, or elves. So that is really cool to see. Having seen some of the lists that have won events, it's got a little bit of dark elves, it's got a little bit of dwarves, it's got a little bit of humans, it's got a little bit of each one. I think that's really cool. I think that really plays into that. Here's the Cities of Sigmar. It's a united front, and they're doing very well for that. So that is cool to see. Beasts of Chaos, awesome as well. I know that it's really stupid. I would love for them to have like a physical faction pack with their rules. That's what I've been relying on because I'm still trying to find my personal army that I really want to focus down for 4th edition. So it would be really cool to have that. I know we got the phone and everything like that, but it gets really cumbersome. So hopefully at some point there's an update that kind of streamlines it so it's a little bit easier to play because I do love my goats. I would love to give them a shot. But it's good to see that they're in that happy little medium. Daughters of Cain, I have it on the receiving end of Daughters of Cain. That makes sense. They have some really good advance and charge and +1 damage abilities that are really putting them out there. Seraphon at 47, that seems about right, honestly. Having read through some of their stuff, there is some strong abilities in there. Croak, your spellcasters, your Salon are still a mandatory. I'd say a Salon for sure is a mandatory, regardless of which side of the faction pack you're playing in terms of formation of, Saurus Croxagore or whatever. You're going to want a Salon, full stop. So that kind of makes sense. Bone Reapers have started to do better, I want to say, than this, but one thing that's probably hampering their percentage from being up here is for sure their points cost. If you throw in Catacross, which I think it's a safe argument to say is pretty much an auto include for his +1 to save and his other abilities, he's taking up 500 points. That's a quarter of your army, and then a lot of your other models are taking up a lot of space as well. So they do not run in large numbers. Let's just say that. That being said, they do well. Sons of Bahamut, probably right about where I'd expect them, honestly. They are a boogie band to me personally. I have plenty of PTSD. I played at the Tampa Open when King Broadstomp Regiment of Renown got introduced, and I literally got the terrain kicked at me and my Idoneth Deepkin. So that was, speaking of which, Idoneth Deepkin up at 49%. I could see that. The rules actually look really strong. Especially their formation that allows the +1 to hit on companion weapons, seeing as if you're running a bunch of mounted, whether you're running Alpexes, Eels, anything. King, Leviathan, like all this is companion, you're getting +1 to hit. That is taking from a 4 to a 3. That is incredible. That makes them so much better. Fire Slayers at 45%. That I am very curious on. I've seen a couple lists that have done well, that have won. I would honestly love to see those games. I would love if there was a live stream of those, just to see how they play. Having obviously played the Fire Slayers and having given my feedback, they're just so squishy. They feel squishier than elves, and that's kind of upsetting, if I'm being honest. Like, I know they're naked dwarves running around, but they're supposed to be kind of tough, beefy, resilient because they're dwarves, and they don't feel it. The resistance is definitely in the cities of Sigmar dwarves. They are definitely a bit more armored. The wards are very appreciated, but when your Hearthguard berserkers and or just any of your berserkers, your specific berserkers other than Volkites, have just a 6-up, and you're praying and banking on a combat range 5-up ward to try and keep them around longer, it's really rough. It's really rough and it hurts. But who knows? Maybe there's some later tech. I would love to see some changes with them, honestly. Now for everybody at the bottom. Let's see how they're doing. So we have Cruel Boys at 44%. That's about right. I think Cruel Boys maybe have a little bit of underrepresentation, but there are some lists out there that are doing very well, leaning heavily into the Monster Killers, which is their Warcry warband. I'd argue it's probably one of the better Warcry warbands that came out of the 4th edition side of things for Warcry. I think they're looking pretty decent. I think their abilities of doing the dirty tricks, I think, is really cool. I like the mechanic where each time you do a dirty trick, it's a harder roll, but you start off at a 2-up. I think that makes it very fun. Khorne, I would expect Khorne to be doing a little bit better. Now, that could just be its current playstyle. Now, there's a lot that factors into this. Again, this is still very early on into the edition, so people still are figuring out their armies that they even ran before, because some armies went through minimal changes, some went through larger changes. As a whole, there are times where I look at some of the Blades of Khorne's lists, and I think there could be a little bit more. I guess if I was running a Blades of Khorne list, and I'll say we have all the money, time, whatever in the world, I'd probably be running a lot of just pure juggernauts. And just, they're 2-up save. I think they have 4 or 5 wounds apiece. They have so much beef to them that it's hard to remove. If you manage to out-drop your opponent and then just pin them into their deployment zone, I could see it working out very well that you just lock them into where they are and they go nowhere. That's my thought. Carriage Run Overlords, 43%. I think that this has dropped off significantly due to the fact that there are probably a lot of people who put away their KO. I think just like any other, just like almost any other army here, a good pilot will absolutely change that around. But KO going from very, very overwhelmingly powerful shooting to having to kind of do a bit more of a mixed bag, having a bit more balanced gameplay, I think it has kind of hampered them a little bit. I'd have to take a look at the points. I still thought a lot of the abilities still looked really good. It was kind of interesting. I think also one major change that probably threw people off was the fact that your models are no longer stationed on the boat like a transport anymore. Instead, it's the boat is picking them up and bringing them to a new place, and they stand out. I mean, realistically, you could, if I recall correctly, you could still attack the unit in the boat, but maybe that's just the game's way of removing that interaction, because maybe it was a situation where people were, they attacked, they charged the boat, and then they didn't think they could attack the people in the boat, and so they attacked the boat lives, and then everybody kicks. Who knows? I don't know. But I see that there. Megakin and Nurgle, I can absolutely see that. Their disease has been greatly reduced. Megakin definitely still trying to play the outlast you, but it's gotta outlast you. If it gets clapped early on, it's hard to bounce back from that. Skaven, I'm surprised to see Skaven at 42%, if I'm being honest. I think there's a lot of tricks in the Skaven book. I don't know, I know there's a lot of people who play Skaven very frequently, who played Skaven before, who aren't happy with some of the new changes, some of the new additions. I think there are small things on there that absolutely still make them, could make them absolutely terrifying to deal with. Having played against Skaven a couple times, I can see where you could beat them, but I also see that they have some really powerful abilities. I think that's could change as well. Stormcast Eternals. Having played Stormcast Eternals recently, there are some things that I'm really happy with in terms of the change. They still feel very much like an elite heavy army. I tried bringing a bit more of the foot units. best way I could define Stormcast Eternals right now is a 3-up save never felt so bad, in my opinion. There were just times where they just did not feel like the elite force that they are. But granted, it's unit choices and stuff like that, but I think there could have been more done to really improve certain models in the units. I think some came out very nicely, like Vanquishers. I think Vanquishers, if you have 5 or more models going up to a 2 damage, is really cool. Very thematic, but depending on your army, and especially depending on how 4th is shaking up, which right now 4th is shaking up very monster heavy, very big model heavy, your Vanquishers are going to be useless then. At that point, you're swinging into something. I would love for them to do, if the unit's control score is 5 or up, it goes up to damage 2. I think that would give them a good extra lift, because in that way, if it's got 5 models and it's, control score, objective control 1, then that's an objective control score 5. So you'd get the +1 damage into that. And then obviously same with monsters. Monsters are control score 5. I think that could be a way to give them a facelift. Sylvaneth, 41%. I don't have a ton to say about that one. I see some decent lists out there, but again, it seems very monster mashy. It sounds like Alariel, Belthanos, and Durthu. Those are your 3 models. I haven't heard much about the other ones on top of that, so that probably is contributing to that. Ironjawz at 40%. That makes me sad still. I really like the Ironjawz. I think the Ironjawz is very cool. I can see a bit how, having talked to one of my teammates about it, they're hitting on 4s, and there's a decent amount of -1 to hit up here, and so that makes them hit on 5s. And that is very rough. And they are now a 3-up save, which I think is cool. I think that is very helpful to give them that extra little bit of resilience to them. But they're still sitting down here. It's still very unfortunate. I don't know if it's going to be points adjustment to maybe squeeze out another unit or 2 that might help them get up here. We'll see. Flesh Eater Courts. This one I feel very specifically about. I think this one has got to be, for sure, a points adjustment, because having played the army, there's a lot of mechanics in there that feel very good. There's a lot of strike last, strike first mechanics that you can maneuver around. I know that at least relatively recently there was a Flesh Eater Courts 5.0 that came up. It relied very heavily into Cryptors. I think they had 3 units of reinforced Cryptors for a grand total of 6, 12, 18 Cryptors. Yeah, I think Usharan is still really good. I think he's still pointed appropriately for his strike last shenanigans, his other abilities. Yeah, I just think it's maybe points, because sometimes for the Flesh Eater Courts unit, like with the Flesh Eater Courts list, whenever I'm building a list, all of a sudden I just hit the 2,000 points and I'm like, I really don't have that many models here. Like, I know the game as a whole has scaled down a bit from where it was before, but Flesh Eater Courts should feel like the undead horde of just aggressive cannibals. I think it's missing a little bit of that as well. And I think the representation has gone down aggressively, if I recall correctly. So that is us covering all the overall win rates. Let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Of course, if you like this content, feel free to like, share, subscribe. Again, I apologize that I am toppled over in pain and feeling wildly unwell. But I just wanted to, get something out there, have a conversation, start the conversation here. Let me know what faction that you're playing down below. Let me know if you feel like your faction's sitting in the right spot, if you feel like it's sitting higher than you think or lower. And just let me know. But, in between now and then, of course, please go paint something.